Music theory with OneNote. Scales built by interval or modal distance, comparing the minor modes, which are the Aeolian mode, otherwise known as the minor scale, the Dorian mode, and the Phrygian mode. We're even throwing in the Locrian mode for good measure. Good mode measure, that is. So get ready and some coffee, because although we're just playing with OneNote, it's a beautiful note. Required to, but if you have access to it and would like to follow along, we're currently in the OneNote file of Modal Node System, MNS, Presentation 1319, OneNote, scales built by interval or modal distance, comparing minor modes, and Locrian, list of presentations, which we plan on adding plenty more to shortly. Also noting, within this OneNote presentation, we'll spend all of our time on music theory, but we have a similarly numbered and named presentation where we build these tables in Excel, practicing Excel, music theory, and table visualization at the same time. We're continuing on with our intervals, but this time looking at the intervals for the minor modes, looking at the distances that don't land us in the ocean, comparing and contrasting the intervals for different scales, or you might say different modes. But I would like to visualize it as saying I'm going from continent to each of the continent locations, each of the mode locations within our 7 collection of notes, and comparing the distances that don't land us in the ocean. All right, we'll get an idea of what we mean a little bit more clearly by visualizing the fretboard, that being the best visualization of it as a map of the territory, similar to the globe. Has 7 destination continent type locations. It's got 5 non-destination ocean type locations, which we go through to get to the continent or destination locations. Our head is above the fretboard, above this low or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling. We imagine the fretboard can be spinning around like the planet, assigning it 12 degrees of rotation, typically working in the 4th degree of rotation, and the collection of notes around it, that being the C major collection of notes and related modes. But we could shift it up to C sharp to D sharp and so on, and the whole world, like the planet, would simply spin around. All the continents would be the same. Therefore, I don't want to name my continents by the note name. I'd rather name it by the continent name, which is equivalent to the Nashville number system, 1 through 7. That's like a permanent modal system, which you could just say it's the nodes, it's the modes. So the 1 is the Ionian, the 3 is the Phrygian, the 2 is the Dorian, and so on and so forth. So now we're looking at distances. Last time we started with the Ionian mode, which is the standard, because that's the major scale. That's what all of our normal distance measurements, the intervals, are based off of. And so we compared the ones that are similar to the Ionian. That's going to be the Mixolydian and the Lydian. They all have a major third. The Mixolydian and the Lydian only have 1 interval difference from the Ionian. Now we're going to go to the ones that's most different from the standard or Ionian. Those are going to be the minor modes. You would think the main minor, which is the Aeolian, would be the most different, kind of like the opposite of the Ionian. But it's not quite, because there's one that's more minor, that's going to be the Dorian, and there's one that's more minor and it goes crazy with a flat 5, and that's going to be then the Locrian. So that's how we want to basically see it, but we want to see first the main minor, which has a justification that kind of makes sense beyond just it's the one that everybody kind of liked to play after the major mode, and that is that once we learn the intervals for the main minor, then I can compare the other 2 minor modes, the Dorian and the Phrygian, and they're only going to have 1 interval difference from the main minor. And then the Locrian's crazy. It's a little weird. It's kind of like the main minor, but it's closer to the Phrygian. It's more minor than the main minor, and it has one interval different than the Phrygian. So that's how we normally learn it. Now remember, the main distance that makes the main minor, all the minors minor, and the majors major, is the 2 modal half steps up. So if I go 2 modal half steps up, which would be the 3rd scale degree, I get to a continent from the Ionian by going 3 steps: ocean, continent, continent. But if I'm on a major mode, to get to the same 2 continents up, which would be the 3rd scale degree, it's a 4 distance location. So that's the defining interval that defines something as a major mode or a minor mode. So all of the three modes that we are looking at will have a distance to get to the second continent up, or the third scale degree of 3. So that's going to be the Dorian, the Aeolian, and then the Phrygian. So where's the Phrygian? Right here. So wait, that's the Lydian. Phrygian. Boom, boom, boom. So that's going to be basically the idea. So we'll first compare the Aeolian to the Ionian, and then we'll compare the other minor modes to the Aeolian, and then we'll compare the Locrian, which is a little crazy. All right, so up top we have all of the distances, and we're going to first compare it here to the Aeolian. So Ionian to Aeolian, meaning major to minor. So what if we go at 1 modal half or 0 modal half steps up? So we're going to stay going nowhere. If I'm on the Aeolian, it would be A to A. We didn't go anywhere. That would be a modal distance of 6 to 6. So let's go down and actually draw on our fretboard here. We're going from the Aeolian. Let's go as far back as we can from 6. Should I have a different color? Let's just keep it whatever. 6 to 6. And I can compare that to the Ionian. Let's make it green. And we'll make the Ionian green. Get out of here, thing. It's going to be here. We'll say it's going eye to eye. Comparing those two. Okay. So it's going to be 0 modal half steps forward. And it's going to be the first scale degree, therefore. So the note half steps are 0. We didn't go anywhere. So normally we call that a perfect first, a 0 note away perfect first. That would be the same for the Ionian as well as the Aeolian. And I would rather call it a 0 note away from the Aeolian node, 0 modal half steps, because we didn't go anywhere. What if we go to the next one up, meaning we go 1 continent up? So now we're going 1 continent up. If I do that, then let's go here and say, what's that going to be? Well, from the green, if I go 1 continent up, it'll be here. And then let's do the red. If I go 1 continent up, it's going to be here. So there we have it. So let's say, all right, let's go back. So if I go 1 continent up from the Ionian, I get a 1-2 modal range, which is a 1 modal half step, second scale degree, 2 note half steps. We call that a 2 note away major second. I'd rather call it a 2 note away from the Ionian node first modal half step. So we get to an AN modal range, which we could say is a 7 modal range. It's 1 modal half step or 1 continent up in the clockwise direction, which means it would be the second scale degree. The node half steps are 2 once again. Now that's weird because you would think, because the normal naming convention says this is an M. Usually, if you try to just think these letters make sense, you would say, okay, the perfects are going to be the same for the Aeolian, and then the big M's are going to be little m's, flattening them for the minor. But that doesn't exactly work, because the idea on the majors was basically simply, I'm just going to put all the modes in there for the major and give it a large M. But then they liked the distance of 7 notes away so much that they wanted to make it something different, a perfect, and then they had to make the inverse perfect, and they did that for the 1 as well. So it's not like the minors are going to all show up then in the Aeolian. So it happens to work out that we still have a 2 note away major second in the main minor mode, which is the Aeolian. Right, that's not really what you would expect. Now we do have a minor in a minor mode, a minor second, but it's in the Phrygian and in the Locrian, as we'll see later. So I'd like to call it a 2 note away from the Aeolian first modal half step, right? It's 2 notes away from the Aeolian node first modal half step, which would be the second scale degree if I make that the 1. All right, what if we went 3 modal halves? What if I went 2 modal half steps up from the Ionian? That would be an IP modal range, a 1-3 modal range, a 2 modal half step up, third scale degree, 4 notes up. So we would call that a 4 note away major third, or a 4 note away from the Ionian node second modal half step. So here's the big one that is the defining factor between a major mode and the minor mode. So if I go from the Aeolian, I go here. If I go from the Ionian to the next continent up, it's here. So here's the main difference in distances on the third scale degree or the second modal half step. That's quite important. So we're going to say then on the Aeolian, it's going to be an AI modal range, which is a 6 to a 1 modal range, because it goes 6, 7, and then 1. That has a modal half steps distance of 2, because again it's 7 and then 1. So two distance as we go around the circle. We would call that the third scale degree. And then that's going to be, the note half steps are 3 instead of 4. So what are we going to call that then? Normal naming convention, it's going to be a 3 note away minor third. Remembering that the minor, the little m, and the large m are not the thing that should tell you. It should be the 3 notes away versus the 4 notes away. So I would recommend in your mind thinking of it as a 3 note away third and a 4 note away third. That's the thing that should tell you. The M shouldn't give you any more information. If it does, you're not thinking of it as optimally as you should. You're basically making up this magic thing that's not really tied to anything, right? The M isn't tied to anything. The M is triggering the distance if you're not given the distance. But the distance is the important thing, not the M, whether it's large or small. I'd rather call it a 3 note away from the Aeolian node, second modal half steps, right? That makes more sense. All right, let's say we go the next one up. So we're going to go to the next continent up. So we'll go from here to here, and then here to here. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3 continents up, or the 4th scale degree. And it's going to be 1, 2, 3 continents up, or the 4th scale degree. You can see the distance is the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're back to normal, even though the pattern between them are not the same. So if I go back up, and we're going to say, okay, if I go 4 up, it'd be an IY modal range, Ionian to Lydian. 1, 4, it's a 3 note up modal half steps, 3 continents counter on clockwise. 4th scale degree, the distance is going to be 5 note half steps, which is going to be a 5 note away perfect 4th. Let's go ahead and highlight these as we go. I'd rather call that a 5 note away Ionian third. So let's bring this back to here. So here we're going to say it's an AD modal range. If we start from the Aeolian, we're going to land on the Dorian. That's going to be a 6-2 modal range because we went a distance of 3. That would be 6, 7, 1, 2. A distance of 3 modal half steps as we go around the circle. That means it's going to be the 4th scale degree. The note half steps then are 5. So once again, it's a 5 note away perfect 4th, which is kind of what you would expect because the perfects are lining up. And I'd rather call it, though, a 5 note away from the Aeolian node, 3rd modal half step. All right, let's do the next one. Let's say we go up to here, and we're going to say, all right, now we're going the 4th modal half step up. So we're going to look at this one first, 4 modal half steps up. So if I'm from the Aeolian and I go 4 up, I'm going to land on a continent here. And if I go 4 up here, I'm going to land on a continent here. So that's going to be the 5th scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4 modal half steps, distance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we start to remember, once again, the distance of 7 is important, or it's going to be constant even through the major and the minor. So from the Ionian, it would be an IX modal range, a 1-5 modal range, a 4 continent away, or 4 modal half steps up, which would be the 5th scale degree, 7 notes away, which we call a 7 note away perfect 5th. The P is not adding anything if you give it the 7, a 7 note away 5th, right? And that means I'd rather call it a 7 note away from the Ionian, 4th modal half step, which would be the 5th scale degree. From the Aeolian, then, if we start on the A and I go 4 up, I get to the Phrygian. Why? Because the Aeolian is 6. If I go up 4 and there's only 7 before I start over, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3 is a distance of 4 modal half steps. That would be the 5th scale degree. The notes going up then are going to be 7. We call that a 7 note away perfect 5th. I'd rather call it a 7 note away from the Aeolian node 4th modal half step. Let's go to the next one. And let's say we go 5 up. So we're going to go 5 steps up now, or 5 continents up. We go here, and then we go here. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 continents up, which would be the 6th scale degree if we make that the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 continents up. 6 if we make that the 1. Distance for the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Versus Ionian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have a difference. From the Ionian to go up 5 modal half steps or 5 continents clockwise, it would be an IA modal range or a 6-1 modal range. 5 modal half steps or continents to the right or clockwise would be the 6th scale degree. It's 9 notes away. We call that a 9-note away major 6, which I'd rather just see as a 9-note away 6th, right? But I'd rather still see it a 9-note away Ionian 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. So from the Aeolian, it's going to be an A. If I start on the A and I go up 5 continents, I get to the Y, or Lydian. Why? Because it's a 6 plus 5 distance, and there's only 7, so it's 6 plus 5 is 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. 6, 4 modal range, 5 modal half steps or continents to the right, which means it would be 6 scale degrees, and we only have a distance of 8. So that means we're going to have to call it an 8-note away minor 6. The big M and the small m aren't giving any information. If you provide the note distance, it's just an 8-note away 6th. But I'd rather call it an 8-note away from the Aeolian node 5th modal half step, which would be the 6th scale degree. Let's go to the last one here. We're going to go a distance of 6 modal half steps. So if I go up 6 modal half steps, I get here, and I get here, which is almost off our screen. All right. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modal half steps, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modal half steps. That means it would be the 7th scale degree, distance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So once again, we have a difference. It's an I. If I start from the Ionian and I go 6 continents to the right, I land on the Locrian because it's a 1-7 modal range because I went up from the 1, 6 continents to the right or clockwise, which gives us the 7th scale degree, 11 note half steps. So it would be an 11 note away, major 7, or an 11 note away from the Ionian node, 6 modal half step. So if I go from the Aeolian and I go up 6 continents, I get to the Mixolydian. That would be a 6 plus 6 minus 7, or 5 distance, so it would be a 6-5 modal range, 6 modal half steps to the right or clockwise, 7th scale degree, therefore, and that means that we're going to get a 10-note away distance. So that's different. So that means it's a 10-note away minor 7. So the 10 is the important thing. The 10 and the 11 are the important thing. But I'd rather call it a 10-note away from the Aeolian node, 6th modal half step. All right. So now that we have the Aeolian, we can compare the minor modes to the Aeolian. Now, obviously, you can see the differences between the Aeolian and the Ionian, which kind of works nicely with the naming conventions with the M's and the P's, because you can say all of the M's are going to turn to little m's, and the P's are going to remain the same, except for the second, which has still a major second. That's a nice little convention, but it is still just a convention. It's just as easy, really, because then you have to remember all the things where the convention doesn't work, because it wasn't really designed to work that way. All it was designed to do is to give you the distances for the major mode, and then we make up all these stories on how it fits to turn it to the minor mode to make it work, which is fine. But you might as well make up the stories with the thing that matters more, which is the actual number of distance, not the big M and the small m, right? So I'm still working on that. I would recommend that you would work on that as well, because the distance is the important thing. So I want to see, in other words, that the 7 is not perfect because of this P. It's perfect because the 7 distance is a stable distance. It's the math. I'm sorry, people that don't like math. It's the math. It's the distance that matters, not the P. Okay. Anyways, let's compare it to the other. If we compare it to the other minor modes, there's only going to be one interval difference between them and the Aeolian, and the Phrygian is actually more minor than the main minor. All right. So I think I'm going to run out of colors here, but let's say we go back to the Dorian now. So now I'm going to go one distance. We'll go back. So the red is the Aeolian. And then let's see how many other colors do we have here. We're going to go, let's do an orange. And the colors are kind of meaningless. I should have tried to give some meaning to the color, but we'll go orange is going to be at the Dorian. And then what other colors would stand out here? This purplish, a bright pink, a blue. Let's go blue for the Phrygian. So let's go from this Phrygian, okay? And then we also have the Locrian. I need the Locrian. The Locrian is going to be the crazy pink. Will that work? I'll go with the crazy pink on the Locrian. And so I could go from here, but I already have that one. So I have to go from here, which means that's going to get messed up. All right, we'll try that because we have a lot of things happening at the same time. And we're going to go from there to there, and then there, and then the blue needs to go from here to here. So we'll start with one distance away. All right, this is going to get crazy, I can tell. But don't worry, we'll be able to handle it. We've got this. We've got this. Okay. So let's say that we go 1 scale degree or a modal distance of 0. Now we're looking at the Dorian, which is another minor mode. It's the second. So that means we didn't go anywhere. It's going to be a D to a D, which would be a 2 to a 2 because we didn't go anywhere, which means it would be a 0 modal half step up, which means it would be the first scale degree because the scale degrees are off by 1. The note half step would be 0. We would call that a 0 note away perfect first. We would call that, I'd rather say, a 0 note away from the Dorian node 0 modal half step. Phrygian, the other minor mode, it would be a P to P modal range because we didn't go anywhere. It would be a 3 to 3 modal range because we didn't go anywhere, and the P is the 3 from a natural number system. 0 modal half steps. First scale degree, we would call that, it would be 0 note half steps. We would say the distance is a 0 note away perfect first. If you use the lame name or the less accurate, I'd rather call it a 0 note away from the Phrygian node. That's not a perfect, it's from the Phrygian node. Zero is modal half step. From the Aeolian, it would be AA. It would be going from 6 to 6, 0, 1, 0 modal half step, 0 note away perfect first, 0 note away from the Aeolian, 0 is modal half step. From the Locrian, of course, the same thing, but now we'd be on the N, so it would be N modal range, which is the 7-7 modal range because it didn't go anywhere. So that would be 0 modal half steps. That would be scale degree of 1. That would be note half steps of 0. The distance 0 note away perfect first, which I'd rather call a 0 note away from the Locrian node, 0th modal half step. So now we're going to go a distance of 1 continent up from each of them. So from the Lydian mode, I'm not on the Lydian. It was supposed to be the Phrygian. Let me bring this back here. Sorry about that. So we're going to go, okay, if I go from the Phrygian mode, then it's just going to be a half step, right? That's what you would expect from the minor modes, but it's not on the Aeolian. Still has 2 continents up or 2 steps up, continents and oceans, to get to the first continent away or the second scale degree. The Dorian, it takes 2 steps up continent, and you still have to cross an ocean to get to the first continent. So and then on the Locrian, this one you don't have to cross an ocean. So that has a minor second or a 1 note away first modal half step, and then the Ionian has the ocean in between as well. So let's see what that looks like then over here. So we go to the Dorian. We're going to say we want to go to the second scale degree, which is a distance of 1, because all the scale degrees are off by 1. So we're going 1 continent to the right. If I start on the Dorian, then I'd be going to the Phrygian. I'd land on the Phrygian. Why? Because the Dorian is the 2, and I'm going 1 continent up. So I'm going to land on the 3. And so that would be the scale degree of the second modal half step, because the scale degrees are off by 1. The notes are going to be 2 from the Dorian, and that's going to be a 2 note away major second. You would think that the Dorian mode should be a minor second, But no, the major second is the same interval that is in the Aeolian, which we will see shortly. So that's the norm, even though, again, if you learn, well, the majors should be the minors and then the perfects should come through. Well, that doesn't really work unless you make all these exceptions to the rule, which is fine because you're going to make the story that works, but don't convince yourself to think that like these people thought of something really clever that works all the way through. That's not what happened. You're making a story to make sense of something that isn't perfect, right? The system is far from perfect, and you're making up a story to try to make it make sense in your mind, which is good for memorization, but it doesn't mean that the system was good. It means that you're trying to make it work. So I'd rather call it a 2-note away from the Dorian first modal half step. So what about if we go from the Phrygian? If we go 1 modal half step up from the Phrygian, I'm going to land on the Lydian. Why? Because the Phrygian is the third natural number system, plus the 1 would give us the 4. And so that's going to be the first modal half step or continent to the right. That means the scale degree distance is 2 if you measure from the step that you're on. And the note half step is only 1 this time instead of 2. So the Phrygian actually does have a 1-note away minor second. So the Phrygian is what you would expect. This is why the Phrygian is actually more opposite of the Aeolian. In other words, you might make the argument that you would think that it would be Ionian, and then the minor mode, the main minor, should be Phrygian. Why? Because it makes sense just from the interval naming, because the perfects all come through as perfects, and then all the majors get flattened to minors. That doesn't happen on the Aeolian, but it does happen on the Phrygian. But that's not the way we do it. We say the Aeolian is the main minor. Why? Because we like the Aeolian. That's probably the only reason. But it happens to work out well because the Aeolian is closer to both the Phrygian and the Dorian because there's only one difference between the intervals between those two. Whereas if you made the Phrygian the main minor, then it would have 2 interval differences between it and the Dorian, right? So it just happens to work out well. But again, I think it's just our mind making the story and then pretending like there was some master plan when they came up with the intervals when there wasn't. All they did was name the intervals based on the major scale, right? That's all. And then now we're making up a story, so which is good for memory, but okay. So I'd rather call it a 1-note away from the Phrygian first modal half step. Now from the Aeolian, if we go 1 continent up, it would be an AN, or an Aeolian to the Locrian, which would be a 6-7 modal range because it would be 1 modal half step up from the 6, and it would be the second scale degree. And it once again has a 2-note away in continents and oceans, so that is a 2-note away major second, right? It's a 2-note away major second, which is the same as the Ionian up top. I'd rather call it a 2-note away from the Ionian first modal half step. And then from the Locrian, the crazy Locrian, that's an NI modal range. If I start from N, I go up 1. I get to the I. Why? Because it's a 7 plus the 1 distance gets us around the horn back to 1 because there's only 7 of them, which would be the second scale degree. The notes are only 1. So that means the Locrian, the crazy Locrian, is more minor than the main minor. It's actually closer to the Phrygian mode. It has that 1-note away minor second as well, but it's not technically a minor mode because it has a flat 5, which makes it go totally crazy. You've been kicked out of the minor club because of craziness, and you're like your own thing. You're just hanging, doing your own thing. So then so let's go to the next one up. Let's say we go to the scale degree, the third scale degree, or the second modal half step up. Let's do that on our map. So we're going to go up from the Phrygian, 2 continents up from the Aeolian, 2 continents up from the Dorian, 2 continents up from the crazy Locrian, 2 continents up from the Ionian, 2 continents up. So we can see it's 2 continents up, which would be the third scale degree. That's the really important interval, which defines major or minor. So you would think all of the minors would be in unison on this one with a distance of 1, 2, 3. Distance from the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3. Continent, ocean. Distance from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3. Distance from the Locrian, also 1, 2, 3, because it's close to the minors on that one. But the Ionian, the major, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is what the one interval where you have the uniformity, because it's the thing that defines whether something is major or minor. Okay, so from the Dorian, if I go 2 continents up, I would land on the Lydian. Why? Because the Dorian is a 2 plus 2 lands us on the 4. It's a 2-4 modal range, a dy modal range. So that means it's going to be a scale degree of 3. The note distance is 4 in continents and oceans traveling in the clockwise direction. We call that a 3-note away minor third, and I'd rather call it a 3-note away from the Dorian second modal half step. You would expect a similar distance, but starting this time from the Phrygian node, going 2 continents up, then is going to land you on the Mixolydian. Why? Because the Phrygian is a 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. It's a 3-5 modal range. You went 2 modal half steps up, which is the 3rd scale degree. Modal half steps, or note half steps, would be 3. So once again, the distance is a 3-note away minor third to get to from the P to the X, from the Phrygian to the Mixolydian. I'd rather call it a 3-note away from the Phrygian node second modal half step. From the Aeolian, you'd be going from A to I. It'd be a 6-1 modal range, 2 modal half steps away. 3rd scale degree, therefore, notes up are 3. 3 notes away, minor third. I'd rather call it a 3-note away from the Aeolian node, second modal half step. What about the Ionian up here? The Ionian is the different one because it's a major mode. It's the major mode. It would be an IP. So that would be a 1-3. Modal half steps are 2. It would be the 3rd scale degree. Notes are going to be 4 notes away. So that's the 4-note away major third. This is the distinguishing factor between the major and the minor. What about the Locrian? Well, it's more minor than major, and this is the distinguishing factor between minor and major. So the minors have to claim that the Locrian, they have to say, yeah, the crazy Locrians is more like us than it is to the majors, but we still think he's crazy. So don't put him in our group because he's got that flat 5. And you major people still have a 6-note away distance. You just don't admit it with the Lydian because it's a 4th. So whatever. That's a 7-2 modal range. So then that's going to be a modal half steps of 2 notes away, which is going to be then the 3rd scale degree. And that's going to be a note half step of 3. And then the scale intervals are going to be a 3-note away minor third, which I'd rather call a 3-note away from the Locrian node second modal half step. All right, let's say we go up then. Let's say we go up to the 4th scale degree, which is 3 continents to the right, 3 modal half step distance. So from the Phrygian, that would take me to the Aeolian, a PA modal range, a 3-6 modal range. From the Aeolian, it would take me to the Dorian. From the Dorian, it would take me to the Mixolydian. From the crazy Locrian, it would take me to the Phrygian. And then from the Ionian, it would take me to the Lydian. So this would be a distance of 1, 2, 3 modal half step up, or 4th scale degree. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. What's the distance? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Holy moly. It's the same. The 5-note distance is quite constant, even with the Locrian. So again, the distance of 5 is the thing that you want to see as constant, even though you're going to be tempted to say it's because it's a P. It's because there's a P. That's what makes it important. It's not the P. It's the distance of 5 that's important. Okay, the P is meaningless. This is just, it's like some woke person saying stupid terms that don't help the situation. They're confusing things. You don't even need it. So it's going to be if you start on the Dorian, in other words, let's just break this down make sensibly, and you go up 3 modal half steps or continents to the right, you get to the Mixolydian. Why? Because the Dorian is a 2 plus 3 gets you to the 5. It's a 2-5 modal range, 3 modal half steps to the right, which means it's going to be the 4th scale degree. Notes are going to be then 5-note distance. We call that a 5-note away perfect 4th. I'd rather just call it a 5-note away 4th because the P doesn't really help if you have the 5, but more better would be a 5 node away from the Dorian node, third modal half step. So we measure properly from modal half steps and not mismeasuring from the continent that we're on when we're trying to measure from the continent that we're on. What if we go from a PA modal range? Well, if you go up 3 continents from the P, you get to the Aeolian. From the Phrygian to the Aeolian. Why? Because you're on 3 continent plus 3 going to the right. If we go around the block, you get to 6. That's why it's a 3-6 modal range. Modal half steps are 3. That means the scale degree is off by 1. It's 4 because you measure the continent that you're on, which is weird. The notes distance are still going to be 5, so we still call that a 5 node away perfect fourth, but it would be better be named a 5 node away from the Phrygian node. That's what that P stands for, third modal half step. What about the Aeolian? If you go 3 modes or continents up, you get to the Dorian. That would be 6 plus 3 gets you to 2 because it's 6, 7, 1, 2, 3. 3 modal half steps or continents to the right would be the fourth scale degree. Note half steps would be 5. So once again, it's a 5 node away perfect fourth, which would rather be better called 5 node away from the Aeolian node, third modal half step. What about the Ionian? Well, if you go Ionian, even there, you go up from the I, you get to the Lydian. That would be a 1-4 modal range. It would be 3 modal half steps up because 1 plus 3 gets you to the 4. Scale degrees would be 4 because it's off by 1. 5 note distance, continents and oceans. 5 node away perfect fourth. 5 node away from the Ionian node, third modal half step. What about even the crazy Locrian? Even the crazy Locrian is cool with this one. It's like it's not even going weird on this one. If you go, let's check it out. If you go up 3 continents from crazy Locrian, you get to Phrygian, and that's going to be a 7-3 modal range because 7 plus 3 is 3 because it goes around in a circle after 7, and that means it's a scale degree of 4, and it's going to have a 5 note distance, which does indeed mean it's a 5 note away perfect fourth, and that's going to be a 5 note away from the crazy Locrian third modal half step. So even crazy Locrian is the same on that particular interval. Let's go to the next one down. And we're going to go 5 scale degree modal distance for 4 continents to the right, 4 modal half steps. All right, if I go from the Phrygian and I go up another continent, I'd be here. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 continents up. If I go from the Aeolian, we go here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 continents up. If I go from the Dorian here, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 continents up. If I go from the crazy Locrian here, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 continents up. If I go from the Ionian here, here, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 continents up, which would be the fifth modal half step. What's the distances from the Phrygian? From the Phrygian, where did my cursor go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what we would expect. Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Crazy Locrian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow. Ionian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's only the crazy Locrian. 7 is a very constant distance as well. Not because it's the perfect, not because you put a P, but because 7 is constant. And that's the one that's so constant that when Phrygian broke it, you're like, you're out of the club. You're out of the minor club, okay? Even though the major club didn't kick out, they didn't kick out the Lydian, even though it has a 6 note distance either, but still. That's unacceptable. We're throwing them out of the minor club. So in any case, that's going to be a modal half step of 4. So that's going to be a DA modal range if we start from the Dorian. Why? Because the Dorian is 2 plus 4, which would be 6. It would be a 2-6 modal range, 4 modal half steps to the right. The scale degrees would be the fifth then, and it's going to be a distance of 7, which we call a 7 note away perfect fifth. The P is not important. The 7's important. A 7 note away fifth is all you need, but I'd rather call it a 7 note away from the Dorian node, 4th modal half step. What if I start from the Phrygian and we go up 4 continents to the right, or 4 modal half steps? You'd land on the Locrian, and we'd call that would be a 3-7 modal range, because 3 plus 4 is 7, that you'd land on. It'd be the 8th scale degree. The note's distance, continents, and oceans is 7, so it's still a 7 note away perfect fifth, which is a 7 note away from the Phrygian node 4th modal half step. From the Aeolian, it would be an AP modal range, a 6-3 modal range. 4 modal half steps to the right would be a scale degree distance of a scale degree of 5. The note distance, continent and ocean, 7 note away perfect fifth, 7 note away from the Aeolian node, 4th modal half step. Even the Ionian has an IX modal range. It would be a 1-5 modal range, 4 modal half steps to the right, plus the 1. That's where you get to the endpoint of the 5, which is the Mixolydian. 4 plus 1 gives you the off by 1 scale degree of 5th, and it would have a distance of 7, which once again is a 7 note away perfect fifth, which I'd rather call a 7 note away from the Ionian 4th modal half step. But the Locrian has to get all crazy. And be like, I'm not gonna be with that. If you go that distance from the Locrian, you land in the ocean, because it's gonna be so you have to go, if you want to go 4 modal half steps up from the Locrian, you'd get to the NY, you'd land on the Lydian. That'd be a 7-4 modal range, because 7 plus 4 as we go around the circle is 4, because it starts over after 7, which means you would have a scale degree to 5. But be careful going from Locrian to Lydian, because if you go 7, you land in the ocean. You'll land in the Lydian Ocean, but you have to go 6 distance. And that's going to be a 6 note away diminished fifth, we would call it, from the normal naming convention, which is weird. We won't get into it again, but I'd rather call it a 6 note away from the Locrian node 4th modal half step. Again, you should see it's weird because of the distance. Anytime you see the distance of 6, whether it be forward or backwards, you're like, oh, that's weird, right? There's something that's going to be crazy. That's going to be crazy. It's either Locrian or Lydian is doing something happening here. And so let's do the next one. So now it's going to be a scale degree of 6, modal half steps of 5. So if I look at my map and I go up from Phrygian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from Phrygian, and I go up from the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the Aeolian, and I go up from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the Dorian, and I go up from the Locrian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the Locrian, and I go up from the Ionian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the Ionian. Then what do we get? Distance, that would be the 6th, scale degree. So from the Phrygian, how many distance, continents, and oceans? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's going to be what we would think of as a minor distance, typically from the Aeolian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, that makes sense, because those are 2 minor modes from the Dorian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Traitor. And that's the major distance. What about the Locrian? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what we would expect, because the Locrian's more like the minor. And the Ionian would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 major distance. Okay? So we have a difference between the major and the minor, but the Dorian is more like the major than the minor for this particular one. So if I go from the Dorian and I go up from D up by 5 modal half steps, I'll land on the Locrian. Why? Because I'm starting on the 2 plus 5 gets me to crazy 7. It's a 2-7 modal range, 5 modal half steps to the right, 5 continents to the right, which means it would be the 6th scale degree. Distance is 9. That is a 9 note away major 6, even though it's a minor mode. So this is where the distance is different from the Aeolian, the main minor. 9 note away from the Dorian mode, 5th modal half step. So the Dorian is more like the major than the other modes. The Phrygian is actually more like the minor, as we saw, because it has the 1 note away minor 2nd. So the Phrygian is actually more minor than the main minor. The minor is kind of like actually kind of in the middle, and then the Dorian is like, dude, I'm gonna try to lean towards major because they've been picking on me. They've been calling me a minor person, and I'm like, and then they make fun of the minor. They say the minor's not like good. Minors are bad people. So he tried to be like the major. So then this is going to be an I. If you go 5 modal half steps up, it's going to be a PI modal range. Why? Because you're going 3 plus 5 is going to take you around to the 1. 3 plus 5 minus 7. So 5 modal half steps to the right, and that's going to be scale degrees 6 note half steps. Now we have an 8 note away, which is what we would expect for a minor mode, an 8 note away minor 6, which I would rather call an 8 note away from the Phrygian node 5th modal half step. The Aeolian also, if you go 5 up from the Aeolian mode, you get to the Lydian. That's going to be a 6-4 modal range because you went up by 5 modal half steps from the 6 minus 7 because there's only 7 places. The scale degree would be off by 1, so it is 6 scale degree. Notes are going to be 8, so once again, it's an 8 note away minor 6. I'd rather call it an 8 note away from the Aeolian node 6 modal half step. From the Ionian, though, then that's the major mode. So that would be an I to an A. It would be a 6-1 modal range because you're going 5 modal half steps up plus the Ionian node of 1 gets you to that 6. It would be the 6th scale degree as well because the modal half steps are off by 1. Note half steps are going to be 9. Therefore, it's a 9 note away major 6. The distance of 9 is a major distance typically. 9 note away from the Ionian node 5th modal half step. What about the Locrian? It's going to be more like the minor I would expect. So if I go up 5 continents from Locrian, I get to the Mixolydian. Why? Because I'm starting at 7 plus 5 minus 7 because it goes around the horn, gets me to 5. 5 modal half steps to the right would be scale degrees off by 1, 6. And the notes then would be an 8 note away distance, which is what we would expect from a minor mode, 8 note away minor 6. And that would be an 8 note away from the Locrian node 5th modal half step. So now the Locrian is more minor than the main minor because it has a minor 2nd, but it's also crazy because it has that flat 5. So the Locrian, as we can see, is closer thus far, and it will be continually to the Phrygian than the Aeolian because it only has 1 interval difference from the Phrygian, 2 difference from the Aeolian. All right, let's go to the next one. Next one up is the last one down. Next one up is the last one down. 7 notes away, or a 6 note away 7th. So if I go from the Phrygian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away, which would be the 7th scale degree from the Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modal half steps away would be the 7th scale degree from the Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 modal half steps away would be the 7th scale degree. Locrian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would be down here, but now it's going to go up to here, let's say. And then the Ionian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, and we can put this one here. All right, so 6 continents away are modal half steps, 7 scale degrees. What's the distance from the Phrygian, continent, and ocean, or notes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's what you would expect. That's a minor distance. Aeolian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Also a minor distance. Dorian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All the minor modes are in agreement. What about the Locrian, which we would expect to be more like the minor than the major? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That 8 repeats over here. 9, 10. So it is 10 notes like the minor. But the Ionian, because it's a major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the major has 11. Now remember that the major, one of the majors, the Mixolydian, also has a 10 note away minor. So the 10 note distance is actually much more prevalent than the 11 note distance, which is only there with the main major scale, Ionian, and the Lydian, which is the least used mode because it has the crazy 6 note distance, but it's a 4th instead of a 5th. So the 10 note away distance on the 7th scale degree or 6 modal half step is actually more common. All right, let's bring this one down. Let's wrap this thing up. So we're going to say it's going to be, if you go 6 up from the Dorian, you get to the Ionian. Why? Because you're starting on the 2 and you're going up modal half steps of 6, which would get you 6 plus 2, which would be 8 minus 7, or 1 to 1 modal range. If you go 6 modal half steps to the right, it would be the 7th scale degree, and the modal half steps would be 10, which would be a minor distance, which we would call a 10 node away minor 7. The 10 is all you need, though, a 10 node away 7th scale degree, which I'd rather call a 10 node away from the Dorian node 6th modal half step. What if I go up then 6 modal half steps or continents from the Phrygian node? You get to the Dorian. Why? Because you're starting on the 3 plus 6 would give you 9 minus 7, or 2. A 3-2 modal range. You're going 6 modal half steps up, which would be the scale degrees off by 1, therefore 7. The note distance is going to be then 10, which is a minor distance, and therefore we would call that a 10 note away minor 7. Better be named, though, a 10 note away from the Phrygian mode 6 modal half step. Aeolian. If you go 6 continents up from the Aeolian, you get to the Mixolydian. Why? Because you're starting on a 6 plus 7 plus 6 minus 7 gets you to the 5. 6 modal half steps plus 1 gets you to the 7. It's a 10 note away distance, a 10 note away minor 7. I'd rather call it a 10 note away from the Aeolian mode 6th modal half step. But what if you were on the Ionian, the major? If you go 6 nodes up or 6 continents up from the Ionian, you land on the crazy Locrian. Why? Because the 1 is the Ionian plus 6 continents would get you to the 7, which is a 1-7 modal range. If you go 6 modal half steps to the right, you'd get on the scale degree of 7, which would be a distance of 11, not 10, which is a 10 note away major 7, but would better be named a 10 note away from the Ionian node 6 modal half step. What about the crazy Locrian? Well, it's going to be more similar to the minor, you would think. So you have an AN modal range. If you go 6 continents up from the Locrian, you get to the Aeolian. Why? Because if you're starting on 7 plus 6 continents to the right and they start over after 1, you get to 6. It's a 7-6 modal range. If you went 6 continents up, it's the 7th scale degree. Note half steps are 10. That's continents and oceans, which is the minor 10 note away minor 7. 10 note away from the Locrian node 6 modal half step. Now, if you have this worksheet in Excel, you'll be able to compare these and hide the columns to do whatever you want, so that you can compare the modal ranges, or you can compare the scale degrees or the intervals by just hiding the columns. But here's just a couple ways you might look at it. You might want to hide the columns and look at the Dorian, the Phrygian, the Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, all of them. But now I'm looking at them just by the normal naming convention, right? So you have a perfect first all the way through. Of course, when you go 1 continent up, then it's going to be then a 2 note away, versus the Phrygian has a 1 note away distance. The Lydian has a 2 note away distance. The Mixolydian has a 2 note away distance. The Aeolian has a 2 note away distance, and the Locrian has a 1 note away distance. So this is the one where the Aeolian, most of the minor modes are actually in agreement with the major mode, and it's the really crazy ones that are different, right? The Phrygian is more minor than the minor mode, and then the Locrian have a 1 note away second. If you look at the 3rd scale degree, modal distance of 2, then this is where you would expect the majors and minors to line up perfectly, because this is the thing that names them as major or minor. So you have a 3 note away distance for the minor 3rd Dorian, 3 note away minor 3rd for the Phrygian. You've got a 3 note away minor 3rd for the Aeolian, as well as the Locrian. But then on the Mixolydian, you have a 4 note away major, as well as the Mixolydian and Lydian. I don't know why I didn't add the Ionian here. I'm missing the Ionian. I had all of them but the Ionian. I don't know. I think I was maybe trying to compare just the minor modes, and I didn't hide these two. But anyways, it's a 4-3. If you go scale degree 4, the modal distance is 3. So that's going to be the perfect 4th, which again is a distance you would expect to be in most of them, right? So the Dorian has a 5 note away. The Phrygian has a 5 note away perfect 4th. The Aeolian has a 5 note away perfect 4th, as well as the Phrygian and the Locrian. And it's only the Lydian that has that weird distance, which is a major mode of a 6 note away, but this time on the 4th instead of on the 5th. The Locrian also has a 6 note away distance, but it's on the 5th. So and you can see it here. If I go scale degree of 5, it would be a modal distance of 4. So if I just look at the minors, it's a 7 note away distance, perfect 5th. So that's what it is on the Dorian. The Phrygian, 7 note away, perfect 5th. The Aeolian, 7 note away, perfect 5th. But the Locrian has a 6 note away distance. That 6 note away is the same as this one, but it's 6 note aways to get us to the 5th scale degree in this case, because we're looking at scale degrees, versus this one would be the 4th scale degree, although it's misnamed because that should be a 4. That's why it's red. So then if I go to the next one, and that's because there's 2 names for that, and the Excel worksheet is, I don't want to get all crazy trying to get the 2 names on the Excel worksheet because I don't think it's worth the time. But in any case, then if I go 6 scale degrees up, 5 modal half step, on the minors you get a major for the Dorian, 9 note away distance. Whereas the Phrygian, you get an 8 note away distance, and the Aeolian, you get an 8 note away distance, and the Locrian even, you get an 8 note away distance. This is where the Dorian is closer to the Lydian and Mixolydian, the major modes. And then on the 7 scale degree, or 6 modal half step, you would expect the similarity for all the minor modes. Dorian is 10, Phrygian 10 note away minor 7, Aeolian 10 note away minor 7, Locrian 10 note away minor 7, and then the majors have a 11 note away, so with the Ionian if we saw that, but the Mixolydian is closer to the minors in this case. So here are them again, this time looking at the same thing, but looking at the distances, which I think would make more sense if we could build it from scratch. A 2 note away from the Dorian, first modal half step, and so on and so forth. And then this one is comparing both all the way across. So now we have the Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, and it's comparing both interval types. So these are just a sample of different combinations that you might use. This is everything. This one up top is everything. So now we have all of the columns. So this, you can imagine various combinations depending on what you're trying to understand that you can just simply hide. And again, if you have this in Excel, you can hide any columns you want, compare any naming convention you want, look at the modal ranges and whatever convention you want. And because you have the headers up top, you can see clearly, hopefully, that's what the design is, what you're working with.